Hello, and welcome to my very first podcast episode. I'm your host. I'm not going to tell you my name, but I'm your host. um, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Anyways, I don't have a name for this podcast. I have some in mind that I'm thinking of, but I honestly don't know what's going to be put on YouTube. I don't even know if this will ever get posted because I'm not going to lie, I've made so many episodes in the past and I just never posted them or shared them or sent them to anybody to listen to, and I just ended up deleting them. So I don't know if this one will make it out, but hello. So just to start off, I do want to say that I don't think that this podcast will be of interest for probably a lot of people. I think that this podcast will definitely be more self-servient and in a way kind of selfish. It's kind of Madeline Archie inspired because I personally am a huge fan of her podcast. And oh, by the way, she's a TikToker and she also has a YouTube channel where she posts podcast episodes. I don't know, maybe you know her. You probably do. She's a big influencer, but anyways, I love her TikToks. Actually, okay, I mean, I like her TikToks. I love her YouTube, and I love her podcast. So this is kind of inspired by her because her podcast is very much something I'm religiously always doing. Wait, I don't think I used that word properly, but whatever. Whatever. Basically, whenever I'm driving, I always put on her podcasts. And I just love how self-aware she is. I love her introspectiveness. Introspection, sorry, English. I love, honestly, so much about her and her podcast. I feel like people who don't get it are just not going to get it, but if you do get it, you do get it, okay? You're going to love her podcast if you're anything like her, and if your brain works in any way, shape, or form similarly to hers. So I think I just really resonate with her thinking process. I feel like my way of thinking and my just the way that I am, I guess, is very similar to her. Although I don't think I'm nearly as articulate as her. I'm not eloquent. I'm not articulate. I just have a lot of thoughts that I want to get out into the world in some ways. So that's why I'm trying to make a podcast. I don't really know what this podcast will be about. I think it's going to be kind of like hers, where it's very self-servient, very much talking about herself and whatever she feels like talking about. Because I have tried making episodes where I had a specific topic I talked about, and I realized I just did not enjoy them as much. I have my thoughts, and I don't really feel like proving them to other people necessarily. So that's where I stand on that. But anyways, I would tell you my name, but I really don't want to say that right now at this point. Let's just jump right into whatever I feel like talking about, because this is my first podcast episode and I might as well make it kind of silly. Not silly, but kind of messy, I guess, or all over the place and scatterbrained, because that's how my brain is, okay? So you're getting a real version of me, okay? You're not getting some filtered version of me. You are. Actually, I do want to edit some parts of this podcast, but anyways, the first thing I was thinking about though yesterday, because okay, I was sitting at my desk studying yesterday when I had this thought that was kind of just really annoying me, to be honest, because I don't know, I've just had experiences with people like this and it really pisses me off sometimes, but I can understand why they are this way. That's the thing, is if I intellectualize how someone is, or how they came to be, I unfortunately will give them a lot of grace when I shouldn't otherwise. But anyways, I was just thinking about how I really just I can't stand weak-minded and weak-willed people. And the thing is I just I hate even saying that because I just sound so obnoxious. When I think of someone saying that statement, I have a certain image in my head of who is saying that kind of statement and what they're like and how insufferable they must be. But I swear, I don't like weak-mindedness, and I don't like weak-willed people. Okay, I love all people, blah, 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 whatever. But you know what I mean, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I do think that it stems partly from the fact, partially from the fact, okay, English. Again. Anyways, I think it comes from the fact that my mom growing up, she definitely expressed this exact opinion to me. And the thing is like, I don't want to end up like my mom. I mean, my mom has really great qualities in some aspects, but she's not my role model necessarily. That's a whole other episode. I'm not going to talk about that right now, but she's fine. I mean, she's okay. Like, she's not a bad person or anything necessarily, but I don't know. Anyways, I do think that comes from my mom, because growing up, my mom very much had this immigrant mentality of, oh, we need to be tough. We cannot express any vulnerability. You have to make sure you don't show people your weaknesses. You have to be very strong. And the thing is I think a lot of the immigrant parents, and just people in general, not even immigrant parents or immigrants even, but I think a lot of people in general, when they have trauma that they experience, they end up either expressing it in one of two ways. Actually, there's a lot more than just two ways, but I think the two main ways that come to mind right now is they either go really soft, really emotional, and they're very in touch with their emotions, or they take the approach of wanting to always be really strong, very tough lovey almost, I guess. Although actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, I actually don't think it's just two ways, and I don't think that you can either be in one or the other. Anyways, I think my mom definitely takes the toughness category, or like she's in that category. I think she's definitely more of like a, I need to be strong, I cannot show any weakness, whatever. And so because of that, I think she has definitely very strongly expressed a dislike for people who are weak-minded. I mean, okay, not like those people specifically, but more so just like the concept of it. And I unfortunately I do agree with it at this age that I'm at. Yeah, I think that definitely comes from her. I mean, she definitely did not really understand why some people acted the way that they do. Like, for example, she would maybe tell me a story about someone and how she just couldn't understand why they like folded so quickly, or they just gave in to whatever desire it was. And unfortunately, I do think, or well, also fortunately, I do think that I'm exactly like that. That I also feel the same way. I sometimes cannot understand why some people just give in so easily, why some people they can't really stand for themselves and they just give in to peer pressure just like that. Although I will say, I think peer pressure is, it has a lot to do with your stamina and I guess weak-mindedness to an extent. But then I also think that at the same time, like, you can only be peer pressured if you really wanted to do something. It's not like somebody can necessarily peer pressure you into doing something that you have never wanted to do in your life and you haven't ever had any interest in it. You know what I mean? Maybe they can peer influence you, but I don't think they can peer pressure you necessarily. I mean, there has to be some seed planted there first in order for you to fully go through with that action. Anyways, that's beside the point, but I think that my mom's stance on that and my mom's like mentality when it comes to that, unfortunately, it has kind of infiltrated my mind, which is like, I guess, a good thing in some ways, and in some ways it's also a bad thing. But yeah, I guess let's start there. I don't really like it when people are weak-minded or weak-willed. And what I mean by that is, well, okay, there's like a lot of different definitions out there for that, but I specifically mean when I encounter people who just do everything that they can to avoid any type of immediate pain, whether it's physical or emotional or mental or whatever it is. They do anything they can to avoid any immediate kind of pain, regardless of the longer term consequences, I guess, of doing that. They basically just want to take the easy route, and they don't really invest in their long-term future. And I think a lot of the reason why people do that is because they're insecure or they have self-esteem issues. Honestly, I personally think most of life's issues when it comes to like interpersonal relationships and also like self relationships, like relationships with yourself, I think most of it actually comes from a lack of self-esteem, a lack of self-respect, a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-assurance, happiness within yourself, all of those like things that you're kind of fed through the media to, view in a certain way. I think a lot of it does actually come down to that. And I think this is this is one example, like weak-willed and weak-minded people. I think they don't really have a backbone and they can't stand up for things. I guess that's like another definition of weak-minded and weak-willed people, but that's another type of that I don't really like. But yeah, I think that I just have an issue with people who do anything they can to avoid immediate pain. Part of it could be due to some level of self-projection, just because I know at one point in my life, not that I was weak-minded or weak-willed, I wouldn't ever say that I ever was, but I will say that I used to be a little more weak-minded and weak-willed. So maybe it is some level of me not liking that previous version of myself. I don't know. But growing up, I think I personally was always very good with delayed gratification, at least compared to maybe some other people that I've seen, for example, the people that I'm literally talking about. Not like specific people, by the way. I'm just talking about people in theory. I'm not talking about specific people necessarily, but I think delayed gratification is everything. I feel like part of delayed gratification is trusting in yourself and trusting in the process. Yes, I think a lot of people say delayed gratification has a lot to do with the long-term process, trusting in the future, trusting in God or a higher power, trusting in actions that are out of your control, essentially, to an extent. But I don't think people think about the fact that delayed gratification also has a lot to do with yourself and how much you value yourself, how much you trust yourself, and how much you realize, I guess, also that you have a large influence over your life actions and choices. I think that's something that people don't think about as much. And yeah, self-respect does play a role when it comes to delayed gratification. I mean, if you don't respect yourself enough, and also if you don't think that you're even capable of maybe holding off on a short-term instant gratification pleasure for the sake of a longer-term better consequence, if you don't think you're capable of even doing that and holding off on something that you really want in that moment, if you can't control your desires in that moment, I personally think that is a reflection of low self-esteem and low self-worth, because you don't trust yourself enough to be able to hold off on that. You don't value your time in the long run. You're thinking about yourself in this moment. It's almost, don't hate me for this, it's almost animalistic in that sense. I don't know if that's a word, but it's almost primitive, I guess you could also say. Because when I think of primitive humans, I think of that being kind of close to animals, because primitive humans were obviously, when it comes to evolution, kind of related there. But anyways, it's almost like a primitive animalistic type of thing. Like when you cannot control your desires and you can't control your wishes in that exact moment, and you cannot see why you should hold off on something that you really want in that moment for something that's much better for you in the long run. I mean, it's almost like you don't even prioritize or care about your long-term happiness, your long-term health and well-being, essentially. That's what I think. Hopefully you agree, but if you don't agree, also let me know. Anyways, I think that is, to some extent, animalistic, because animals don't think about long-term consequences. They're only thinking about their instant gratification pleasures, I guess. They're thinking about that exact moment. It's very instantaneous. It's very immediate. It's very much something that they do right in that moment. Okay, I'm like basically just repeating the same thing, but I hope you know what I mean when I say animalistic. And I feel like a lot of people might not realize that is something that has a connection there, I mean, being weak-minded, being weak-willed, that's what an animal, I mean, no hate to animals, but that's kind of what animals do, like in the wild. I mean, they biologically are not able to really, a lot of them, not all animals, but most animals are not capable of a really highly developed, functional, complex thinking system, I guess. I don't know if I worded that right, but yeah, like they don't have that. And so that's kind of like, in a way, kind of similarly to weak-minded people. That's kind of how they are too. So anyways, I forgot what I was saying, but I think I just do not like weak-minded and weak-willed people. I think that we need to, as a society, we need to be teaching people how to value delayed gratification, how to value yourself. Honestly, I think we as a society need to be showing and teaching people how to truly love themselves. Not like this pseudo therapy fake BS, but like genuine, real loving yourself. And I also, this is kind of off topic, but maybe I'll make another episode about this. Or maybe I'll talk about it now, I don't know. But I also think that people need to really realize that happiness within yourself and confidence especially does not come from your physical appearance. Repeat, it does not, okay? Okay, maybe for some people they try to make that the way that they achieve confidence in themselves, but that's definitely not a good way to approach confidence, and in the long run that's not going to work out for you. I'm sorry, but it's just not going to work out for you. That's a whole other topic that I'll probably talk about another day. I don't really feel like talking about it right now. Anyways, back to weak-minded and weak-willed people. I don't know, it drives me insane. It honestly is a very big reflection of how you feel about yourself when you are that way. I can think of people in my own life too. This is not shade. I'm really not trying to shade anyone or anything. But I can definitely think of people in my life, or who have been in my life, who definitely were weak-minded and weak-willed people. And they just kind of, for example, if they were hanging out in a group setting with people that they are kind of friends with, for example, and then they find out that maybe one of them is definitely not a good person, they would continue to stay friends with them or stay around them, even though they fully know that they're not morally a good person. They would continue to do that just because they don't want to be alone. And that's a whole other topic of discussion, but that is something that I just cannot wrap my mind around. I can understand it to an extent. Obviously, if you're forced in certain situations to be around some people, obviously you can. I personally believe in not being rude or like mean. Even if they're a bad person, I'm going to be cordial with you, but I feel like I just can't understand that. In my opinion, these people do fit under that definition because they are avoiding any immediate type of pain, that immediate pain being social isolation, or maybe feeling, I don't know, some type of way about kind of being viewed as like an outlier almost in the group because they want to fit in. Regardless of those longer-term consequences being a happier, more healthier life, and also just being someone who's emotionally healthy. That's the other thing, is I think people who take the easy route in these specific types of situations where I'm talking about weak-minded, weak-willed people, those people are only prolonging their healing, in my opinion. In my opinion, you are just delaying your healing process. And if you're doing that at the age of, 20 or 25 or whatever it is, you're only prolonging that until one day it all is just going to hit you and you're going to be crashing down and crashing out. I don't know what the term is, but you're just going to be like literally like drowning almost, because it's all going to come and hit you all at once. And at that point, it'll be a lot harder for you. I think that's my other thing, is I just don't understand. I can understand why people do it. I say I don't understand, but I actually do understand. I know why people do these things. I just don't agree with it, I guess. But I just cannot understand. I do, but I can't understand or agree, I guess, with people who just, they are so willing to hurt themselves in the process without even realizing it when they're going through something, for example, by just being okay, let's just move on to the next thing. I'm just going to distract myself. I'm not going to think about what's hurting me right now. I'm not going to let myself process this. I'm just going to immediately move on. I think that's so unhealthy. And that's another thing about, again, weak-mindedness and weak-willedness. I don't know if that's a word, but yeah, like that to me tells me that you are not emotionally mature. And that tells me that you're not going to be emotionally healthy, especially in the long run, if you do those things, okay? If you do things like that, you're not helping yourself. You're only harming yourself. And to me, that seems like you're avoiding any type of immediate pain, just so you can feel a little bit of instantaneous pleasure. But in the long run, that's definitely going to affect you. And I have examples in my head. I don't know if I should share them. I mean, I don't know. The thing is like, I don't want to call people out. I mean, I'm not calling people out, but like these examples are kind of specific to people I know or have known in the past. And I don't want to kind of make them feel a certain type of way because I'm talking about their experiences, and it's almost like I'm calling them weak-willed, weak-minded. I'm not trying to necessarily, but at least not those specific people. But anyways, yeah, like I just think that if you are, let's say you're going through something right now and you are immediately, as soon as you got out of that thing, you're like, well, I don't want to process this. I just need a distraction. I am going to get over this and I don't care. I'm not going to let myself process this. I'm not going to let myself feel the emotions that I'm feeling right now. I'm not going to feel sad. I'm not going to feel angry. I don't care. The world sucks, but I'm moving on. I don't care. I'm going to move on no matter what it is. Well, guess what? Guess what? You are going to be in for a treat one day. And you might not realize that, but you will. And I can say this as someone who back in the day, not that long ago, but like when I was in high school, for example, I definitely would always put my emotions to the side, if that makes sense. Like obviously, like I am emotional to an extent. I don't know if that's obvious to you because you've never met me before, probably, but yeah, I mean, for me, I would always definitely distract myself with other things. I was never a homebody, never really wanted to be home, never wanted to think about my emotions, my feelings, whatever. I would just kind of run away from it, honestly. And then, of course, COVID happened in 2020. And I mean, that pandemic definitely caused me to literally, honestly change my entire mentality about life. And I changed so much as a person. It's kind of indescribable, honestly, but I definitely am not the same person that I was in 2020. And also 2019, because that was right before COVID. Definitely not a homebody, but I am much more of a homebody now. And I did so much self-reflection, so much work on myself, and I just learned so much about myself. I gained a whole level of self-awareness that I never really had, I guess, before. Anyways, that's kind of beside the point, but essentially I basically learned to not distract myself, and I learned to just process things as they happen or when they happen. And I guess that's something that I kind of struggle with right now, just because of the fact that I'm in a career where I really don't have time to be processing things in the moment as they happen, because it's a very, very difficult career, probably like the most difficult career, to be honest, to have. But I don't know, there's not really ever any time to really sit down and process and think about things that are happening in your life and things that you're doing and things that are happening to you also. But anyways, that's a whole other topic. But yeah, I really learned to emotionally process things and how to be emotionally healthy. And the thing that I've learned, that I think a lot of these people who follow weak-minded, weak-willed concepts, I guess, because I think people who are that way, they can definitely change. But yeah, I think something that I think they need to know is that, in my opinion, the best way to get over something is not to get under something. It's that you need to literally let yourself be as sad or angry or upset or whatever negative emotion it is that you're running from. You need to let yourself express it. You need to let yourself be as sad as you are. You need to be expressing your emotions as strongly as you are. Do not suppress that emotion. If you suppress that emotion, it's only going to come back later. And I've seen this with friends. I've seen this with other people also in my life, or who have also been in my life at one point in time. They would just ignore that. They would not do this. Instead, they would just, I don't know, find a distraction, move on, and then later on it just comes back to bite them. And I see that now they're in a much less emotionally mature and less emotionally healthy state. I don't think that they realize that this definitely has a huge effect on their emotional intelligence, or their emotional intelligence to an extent has an effect on this. And it also has an effect on their emotional health, I guess, and their happiness as well. And they keep making the same exact mistakes because they keep running from their previous mistakes. And so anyways, that's what I think. But yeah, I just think that in general, the best way to truly process something and truly get over something is to experience that emotion in that moment. I think that's not something that a lot of people I see online, for example, or even in real life, that's not advice that I hear them really giving, unfortunately. And I think that's such a disservice to society and to us, because you deserve happiness in the long run. You don't deserve to be basically stunting your personal growth and your development and your emotional intelligence, and happiness also, whatever. Yeah, so you need to process it. Oh my god, my microphone. Yeah, you need to process it in that moment as much as you possibly can. Obviously, don't take it to extremes. If you're really angry, don't go like breaking someone's house down because you're really angry. But yeah, you need to let yourself express it as much as you possibly can within healthy limits, and then I guarantee you will be much better off after all of that emotional processing has been done. Because if you let yourself process it, it's not going to come back to bite you as much. It's not going to hurt you as much. You would have already moved on. You would have already gotten over it for the most part, and it's just not going to affect you nearly as much. But if you don't put in that work, if you don't do that, if you just distract yourself, you're literally going to be in a situation where you, again, have the same mistakes, same problems, and you also just in general are not going to be an emotionally mature person. Like, I'm sorry, but you're just not going to be. And that's a harsh truth, but it's the truth. That's why it's a truth. It's actually, no one is saying that's a truth except me. I mean, I guess it's kind of subjective, I guess, obviously, but I'm saying that that's a truth. So it's a truth if I say it's a truth, okay? Okay. But yeah, anyways, yeah, that's, I guess, in my opinion, part of the whole weak-mindedness, weak-willedness rant, I guess, because I think that these people, they don't want to experience any immediate pain. They're just going to put it off and delay it and postpone it as much as they possibly can until one day they run into real issues. It's kind of like procrastinating, essentially, but yeah, I think that is something that we as a society need to discuss. Like, why are you hurting yourself long term like this? You really shouldn't do that. And I mean, I guess part of it is also because of a lot of advice that I've seen on social media, for example, from other people about how to get over things and deal with things and process things. And I think it's horrible advice, a lot of what I've seen online. But anyways, that is my rant for the day. I could say a lot more, but I'm going to leave it there because honestly, I have a lot of things I need to do, actually. So I'm going to go, but I hope you liked this podcast. Yeah, this is my first episode. I don't know how it sounds. Honestly, I just ranted or rambled, I guess, for like ages, and I have no idea what I just said. So anyways, hope you're having a great day. Goodbye.